I am never going to do a full series review of The Simpsons. Ever. There is way too much to watch and explore throughout its nearly 700 episode run. I have seen nearly every episode, having spent 2 years catching up to season 30, and I really want to talk about them outside of my usual review format. Those would take too long and wouldn't be worth it. I'm open to reviewing an episode here and there, but with seasons, I think I found a way to work that out. By ranking them from worst to best, and since the first 10 are the best 10, why not start with them, ease us into it, and remind ourselves of the good old days when The Simpsons was a titan of a show that could do no wrong.
You stupid.
Okay, The Simpsons wasn't perfect, even in the 90s. Seasonal rot hit it like a train, and season 9 and 10, whose status as part of the classic era is kind of debatable, will go at the bottom. And frankly, I had to give the losing spot to season 10.
This will sound every 3 seconds unless something isn't okay.
Turn it off, Homer!
It can't be turned off!
I don't think it's bad or anything. There are more good episodes in it than not, but it has an underlying issue that I don't think any other season of the whole show has. It keeps telling the same story over and over again. Homer goes on way too many zany adventures with derivative story structures, and he's not a lovable oaf in them as much as a tiring dunce. I'd say about half of the episodes here can be judged and described about the same way, even if they're different in quality. Some of them are great, others are pretty bad. Not complete dumpster fires, but there's very little to glean from them. On the other hand, even though Homer's got a lot going against him, the rest of the characters are alright, and when it comes to episodes that are more love it or hate it, I'm more on the love it side because there's still a lot of iconic jokes in even the worst, and the stories may be repetitive, but they have a formula that works more than it doesn't. My advice is to not binge watch season 10. It's good for small doses, so its greater flaws aren't as apparent.
I got my period today.
Really, I don't think season 9 is a lot better than 10. I think the biggest knock against it is how unfocused it is in tone. Because there were a lot more holdover episodes than usual, it feels like this strange hodgepodge of different Simpsons styles. It's pretty uneven tonally, jumping from style to style, principle to principle, and that's a little neat, but it doesn't feel like it has a true identity. And the identity present the most is a bit slower and dumber than in previous seasons. This isn't where the seeds for the show's future were planted, but it was where they grow into something not too pretty. I'm doing my best to not simply list a bunch of episodes, because in the case of season 9, they're not too good and not too terrible all around. I think 10 has higher highs than 9 to be honest, but 9 is far more consistently okay, and has a tighter grasp on what makes The Simpsons such a fun show. This is still a very quotable season. I could give some examples, but can't someone else do it?
Let's go celebrate our newfound ability to express love for each other. I'm taking you out for frosty chocolate milkshakes.
Okay, it may be very outdated and is probably the worst of these on a technical level, but damn it, it's a unique experience. It's got different music and colors to the rest of the series, recurring characters are infrequent and rather flat, it's only got 13 episodes whereas all the others have at least 20, and the jokes are more basic than the zingers on American culture the later seasons are known for. This is, with no strings attached, the show Matt Groening wanted to make, and for that I'll give it a lot of credit. But it's a season 1, so there were a lot of kinks they needed to iron out, even putting aside the animation. If you want to revisit it, I'd highly suggest going in production order. It doesn't make a lot of sense for other seasons, but it's the best way to experience season 1. The animation improves slowly and consistently, you don't just start the whole show with a Christmas special, and Marge getting mad at Homer for dancing with another woman, Christ this show is old, even after she had a fling with her bowling instructor, is far less hypocritical since that happens later. There isn't a lot to say about this season. It's the oldest, it's the shortest, it's nice but won't stick with you as much as the others.
Any questions?
Season 2 is where you see the show slowly but surely evolve into its most acclaimed form. The early episodes here are good, but the later ones are golden. It's very fun to see a show you love getting built before your eyes, and this is just that. The animation is a lot better here. I'd wager it's still one of the most soulful looking seasons. There's more characters introduced here that do a lot more, the old ones are more interesting, and the jokes are a lot funnier. I don't think there's anything in Season 1 that can be compared to Homer jumping Springfield Gorge, or his shockingly quick journey through the stages of grief. I think Season 2 is pretty good if you're in the mood for drama. There are several stories that are kind of bleak when you strip away the comedy. And sure, that's probably not what you want out of a sitcom most of the time, but they keep giving you reasons to care about The Simpsons, and feel the need to see them happier at the end of the episode than the start. It's more serious, but more seriously good compared to the previous 3 picks. Season 3's a little hard for me to describe because I really don't think it's that much different from 2. I'm probably an idiot. But yeah, I like them both around the same, but 3 is definitely funnier and has more casually relatable plots, which makes it better as a situational comedy. Compared to the other seasons on this list, I come here to relax first and foremost. It's got this cuteness unmatched by the others, and they focused a little more on romance this time around, and not always kid-friendly romance. It was also a good season for character development. The secondary cast had bloomed by this point, and they made an effort to make them all feel real now, while still keeping it about the Simpson family and strengthening their bonds too. Homer and Lisa were good characters before, but this was a particularly good time for them. Not too stupid or smart respectively, just like people you would know, if you had friends. Plus it has my favorite animation of the series. The early episodes are indeed early episodes, and even the seasons immediately following it feel more rigid. Like I said, Season 3 is a pillowy comfort zone.
Now we're going to run a few tests. This is a simple lie detector. I'll ask you a few yes or no questions and you just answer truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes.
Not gonna lie, this was the hardest season to rank. It could really go anywhere between 7th place and 3rd place, depending on the areas you focus on. Season 8 is still the most experimental season in the history of The Simpsons, and many of them weren't good ideas with 23 years of hindsight. Making fun of strange swerves and endings is funny in the moment, but not so funny when they started doing it by accident. Non-Treehouse of Horror anthologies were a good idea in theory, but would end up being hit or miss. And there's a lot more meta-commentary in this season than usual, which depending on what kind of fan you are, is either going to take you out of the experience, or make you feel like you're being identified and catered to by the show. And hey, I sure felt like that most of the time. It's one of the more mixed lineups of the series, the later episodes are a little less reliable than previously, but Season 8 has some of the best episodes of television, period. Homer vs. the 18th Amendment in particular might not be my favorite episode, but if one had to survive to the end of the universe, I hope it's that one. It's studied now and deserves to be. To Season 8, the cause of, and solution to, all the Simpsons problems.
I'm a nerd. So am I.
There's a lot you can say about Season 5 that I just said about 8. Its back half is definitely weaker than the front half, and it's bent on changing the show in serious ways. But I'm putting it higher because the changes it made were successful. Say what you will about the extra vinegar they added to the jokes and character of Homer this go around, but I haven't seen a lot of cartoons make it to their 5th season still wanting to keep their first impact echoing. It's not a stretch today, but is if we're going back to a 1994 headspace, but The Simpsons still felt like a brand new show thanks to this new direction. And it's not like just because the writing style changed that the show didn't have as much heart. It still had its moments, which stick out all the more because it's a treat when they reel it back in and take things seriously again. This is by far the most joke-heavy season they ever put out, and by gum they were wisecrackers here. It's not my favorite season for jokes, but I applaud its density. Every episode here will make you laugh at some point, and that's a valuable component of a sitcom, don't forget.
Watch this, Lise. You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
I think Season 4 is still the most publicly acclaimed and recognized of the show. When you see lists of the best episodes, you're bound to see either Marge vs. the Monorail or Last Exit to Springfield top the list, with many others hanging around the top 10. and while it's not my favorite string of episodes period, I love them all to bits. It really feels like the best of both worlds, a hybrid of The Simpsons' two faces in the 90s. You've still got the dysfunctional family sitcom elements that put it on the map, but also a lot of subversive comedy and snappy parodies that kept it in the public eye. It's the third bowl of spaghetti of Simpsons seasons. That can best be seen on the production side. They switched animation studios, hired new writers than before, the old ones were getting worn out, and times were changing. Bart Mania was dying down, and they figured Homer was a better fit as full-on main character. Sure, he always sort of was, but they didn't need to hide it anymore. Springfield was his world here, in all of its stupid and gluttonous, but funny and kind glory.
Don't forget me.
Don't worry, Homer. You'll always be a part of me.
You can tell from a clip like that Season 7 is softer boiled and more emotional than any other. But don't let that deter you, it's fantastic at being just that. After so long, it was a very good idea to dial things back to almost normal, and function more like an experimental drama. It led to some very touching, even challenging sequences that, after a bad day, remind me why I like this show. I mean, there's only one season after this, and it's before it, so technically I consider 7 the start of the decline, but there's more I like in it than I don't. Sure, it can be a little too sappy, but it's enough to send you into a sugar rush, because this is another really funny season, with most of the comedy coming from the plots themselves, which are probably the best written of the whole show. They flow nicely from a beginning to an end, they're tonally cohesive no matter if they're sad or silly, and no stone is left unturned. You get a complete experience every single time. But should I expect anything else from a season that started by ending the previous one's cliffhanger? Speaking of which, my number one favorite season of The Simpsons, for all you non-mathematicians out there, is Season 6. It isn't just home to the best jokes, best treehouse of horror, or the most intense stories, or the most memorable endings, but every single character is in top form here. The stories are darker and more complex and action-packed than ever before, so we see more sides of each Springfieldian. A more gripping feel is just what the show needed to keep impressing me more than ever 6 years in. All these episodes leave big impressions, and this might sound... What, really? Homer vs. Patty and Selma? That's the worst episode of the season apart from the clip show? That one's still really good. On the other hand, everything I like in this season, and the show in general, reaches its apex in Who Shot Mr. Burns, my favorite episodes of the show. They had a lot of nerve to whip up a murder mystery cliffhanger and make nearly every character a prime suspect. But the jokes, stories, and relations are what bring it together and make anything possible. And that's what I want to see out of a great show, especially one as famous as The Simpsons. We just went a lot of places, but have ultimately come back to the pink and green living room that's been burnt into our minds. Remember that this is all my take on these rankings, and I'd like to hear yours. And should I do the later seasons? They're not a pretty sight, but it wasn't a straight downward slope. It's unpredictable to say the least, and that's an ironic note to end a Simpsons video on, but hey, goodbye for now.